Peace, truth, spirituality, healing, holistic health, aliens, ancient history, plant medicine, mysticism. If these words excite you, you're in the right place. Here, we seek to dig deep into all these topics and more. You, me, and my guests together. Welcome to the Enlighten with Alex podcast. So, welcome back everyone to the Enlighten with Alex podcast with myself, Alex. Today I've got a very special guest called Michael Harrell. This is a guy I've followed for about 4 or 5 years just on social media. I'm not sure how it came about, but I really liked all of his content. He's a deeply spiritual guy. I'm wary about having people on that are into like the supernatural and the very spiritual because it's very subjective. Because I've followed him such a long time and I've seen him predict a lot of things, I just think he's a legit, straight up guy. I'm really into his stuff. I really wanted to get him on. So, welcome, Michael.
Hello, friends and family.
Yeah,
I'm kind of glad to be on your show because I've watched your YouTube channel. You know, if not everything, but a bunch of them. And you have some really quality people on there, and I'm just hoping that I kind of reach up to that level.
Nah, I already know from our conversation the other day, you definitely will. So yeah, you're obviously the founder of Language Lessons of the Heart. And do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your kind of history?
That's kind of a big topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. My history. Well, I'm infinite, immortal, and what was never created. Start there. The ground of being is absolute inclusivity and unconditional love. Consciousness is the feeling of energy. Yeah? So, none of us are created. We're all infinite and immortal, and therefore we can't actually be wounded. But what we are is energy beings, and what I am is an energy being. You, the microphone is an energy being, the chair, the earth, the air is an energy being, because that's pretty much all that there is an energy being. And but we have this human life, you know, that there's this saying in the Bible, ye are gods and ye are children of the Most High. So there's that kind of bifurcation of both God and child of God. So I kind of go along with that idea. But for me, my mother and father had an argument when I was just, announced that I was going to be coming into this world. And my father was drinking at the time, and he started yelling at my mother about kids and too many kids. And if this kid's not a boy, I'm going to leave you. And where I was, where she was living at the time was out in Corpus Christi, Texas, which was a really small, tiny town at that time, on the end of a dirt road, with a house that had no screens in it, and she had two sisters, who was like about maybe 3 and 5, I think, at the time, and she like flipped out. She had her whole pregnancy with me was one of fear and regret and rejection, and right. So that was my gestation. And then when I was born, my mom went into complete psychic meltdown, and she started hallucinating, and so it was just too much for her. This whole 9 months or 8 months of worry and concerned, and she couldn't have a job. She couldn't take care of her family and all this kind of stuff. That's going to get, just too much for her. So she was out of the picture for at least 6 months, and they gave her electric shock therapy and stuff like that. So basically, I was born in the midst of uh, such emotional turmoil. That was imprinted onto me. So I was like a crib baby. My aunt, who lived a few blocks away, would come and feed me and change my diapers and stuff like that. My two little sisters, my dad was work. So basically, the first 6 months of my life, I was a crib baby. And that had some consequences later on in life. Um, and that was what you would call, that was my primal emotional wound that later in life I had to face. But and when it comes to trauma, they say fight or flight, fight or flight, freeze or fawn, right? And I was one of those people who was just frozen. I didn't talk, I didn't cry, I didn't create problems. I was just completely withdrawn because I had this, it was imprinted on me that my mother's problems was because of me. I mean, it was pretty clear that was on a pretty deep subconscious level. But I didn't know about any of this stuff until I hit my 40s. You know what I mean? I didn't even know this was going on.
It was all very
And I just,
suppressed before then.
huh?
Was it all very suppressed before then?
It wasn't suppressed. It was just unknown. I mean, you don't know what's going on. Like, do you know what was going on between your mother and father? What your mother's state was when you're, no, it's not something, you have to dig. You have to dig later in life and find out about that stuff. It's not self-evident. And even with investigation, it's. So I was pretty lucky in some ways because, well, anyway, I had this whole thing of not being able to crawl. When babies crawl, when you crawl, you go like this.
Yeah.
And with your knees and stuff, right? Your knees, you crawl like that. And that's actually what gets your hemisphere of your left brain and right brain connected really strong. And people who don't crawl become dyslexic.
Okay.
Dyslexia caused from crib babies, from not having your left brain and right brain working properly. So most of my young life, I was pretty much in my right brain, just kind of like in a daze, very quiet. But so that kind of affected my childhood, and I was like, something wrong with me, and developed a world-class bad self-image. Yeah.
Mm.
But I was also graced because I'm not sure why, but when I was about 20 years old, I met an enlightened guy, full-blown enlightened man, and I had no clue what that was. I was a redneck guy. I was a carpenter, and um,
My dad
that
was a
kind of
carpenter.
semi-hippie kind of a guy. And here I meet I meet this guy who's full-blown enlightened. I met him in Coconut Grove Park in Florida, and that guy, he was so powerful. He blew the transmission out of my car, blew all the seals out of the transmission out of the car. I mean, and then for 2 weeks, like when I was going to a day junior college, I was going to a junior college at the time. As I was driving to the college, I could hear what people were thinking from 2 miles away when they were reading their books in the library. When people read a book and they think. So I'd hear all these mumblings going on, right? And then, but that guy changed my life because I thought, oh, look, there's enlightenment. What the hell's that? And I was driving around in my mind. I was driving around like in this little Volkswagen, and then this guy is getting a 747 flying. I mean, it's like it was just the giganticness of just being next to that guy.
How did he become enlightened, this guy?
Um, he said he knew since he was born that this was his lifetime to become enlightened. And he had some friends out in California, and they said, let me go out and stay with your cat in your cabin for a while, just be with nature. And the cabin didn't have any electricity or water or anything, so it was just one day he was going down to the creek to get some water, and he said this light hit him on top of the head, And then after about an hour, he passed out. And then when he woke up, it was in the evening, and the light was still inside of him and never left. So wasn't it, that? I mean, that's kind of dramatic, but
I suppose it would be, wouldn't it? What was it like to be in his presence? Because people say like they've normally just got such a amazing aura around them, and like
I
the
had no clue. I was like, still smoking a little pot and drinking my little beer, and you know, I think I had at that time I had done some LSD and mushrooms and stuff, and but my consciousness was not uh not going that way. But after meeting that guy, I thought that's what I want. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't just that I could hear people talk from 2 miles away, and that lasted for about 3 to 6 weeks, something like that. But if I went close to somebody, like if when you stand close to one of your friends, or you're kind of in that space,
yeah.
I could see from birth to death their whole life, which is like what kind of like in the Akashic record. And there's all the events, birth of childhood friends and schools, and then the first girlfriend, and then marriage and kids, and then all the way up to death. And
How was that to process? Just
huh?
thinking, is how was that to process? Because it sounds quite overwhelming in a way.
You would think, but it's actually at the same time it feels natural. Like watching a movie pretty much feels natural, except what you see on the screen is you go, wow, and then you go, then later on you say that's just a movie. You just incorporate it, no matter if it's a sci-fi or some kind of wild movie. It's a natural just to see it. So I was seeing this thing, and also they didn't last, and I would just go on about my life. But I was imprinted with this idea of that there's a light inside of you. And then I went on and met like 4 different enlightened men, right? He was one of them. Met another man named Sri Chinmoy, and he gave a talk, and his whole talk was just him sitting on stage in samadhi, and then he had this ability to project light out of his eyes. It wasn't like a flashlight. It wasn't until he looked directly at you that you could see that there was light coming out of his eyes. And
Uh,
what you're actually seeing is inside of him, there was no man there.
mm,
There was no soul there. There was just light. Like you can see into my eyes, or I could see into your eyes, and there's a soul there, there's a being, there's a consciousness. He was gone. That was him. And I met Muktananda. Muktananda was a pretty interesting guy. And then I met Primal Watt. Primal Watt was at the time was a living perfect master, and he ended up being my guru.
mm.
And then I received his initiation and did Kriya Yoga.
Was that the initiation, the yoga?
What's that?
What did the initiation involve, or was it the yoga? Was that the initiation?
The initiation is the guru, no matter where he is in time and space. The guru, and he had Mahatmas, because this guy had like about 1 million followers that he inherited from his father. What the guru does is the guru connects to his life force energy, to his samadhi energy, right? And then he transmits that over to the Mahatma, and then when the Mahatma touches you, right, wherever he touches you, right, it doesn't really matter because it's an energy thing. It's not really a physical thing. When he touches you, it pours in energy into you, and it pours in energy at the frequency and then the location of where that energy resides inside you. And it feels exactly like cool water being poured inside of you, except it's pure life force energy, and it goes inside of you. And that's what you meditate on. And then you have the processes, you have like 4 different meditation techniques, and the processes, so you have light, music, nectar, and holy name. Those are the 4 meditation techniques. Yeah. So I did that for like 13 years. When I started, because because I had met this Enlightened guy, when I first started doing meditation, I was working full time and I still did 6 hours of meditation a day.
Wow, that's impressive. In the
Yeah.
morning,
Huh?
all in the morning, or did you do a bit in the morning and a bit at night?
I did 2 in the morning, and two right when I got home from work, and then two at night, 2, 4, 6. Then
Nice.
I get up and work.
It's crazy. As a
Crazy.
guy,
Well, you can do that kind of stuff when you're young and you're, your mid 20s and stuff. And but that didn't last. That didn't last for that long because life got in the way and went down to 2 hours a day, and then it went down for most of the time of those 13 or 14 years. It was an hour a day.
still pretty.
But and I actually attained God realization, which means that you meditate, and then this is not something you do, it's something that does you, right? So if you sit there long enough, light going to come, the bliss or something's going to come, and this is, it's like it comes when it wants to come, like you have zero control over it, and then you go into that enlightened state, and then you pop back out, or you see the light and pop back out. Yeah.
Sounds amazing.
And yeah, well, it's good stuff, because what happens when you meditate, you're not engaged in your mind so much.
Mm.
The mind's still there, but that's not your focus. And so that, just that alone is kind of a good thing, because mind's kind of very divisive.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean. Like when I first started meditating, I couldn't believe how like floaty I felt afterwards.
Yeah,
It's kind of like just felt in a natural flow state rather than just stuck up here stressing about what to do next.
yeah.
But no,
So anyway, but one of the things about the meditation is I ran out of gas, after, like I said, 12 years or so. So the last couple of years, there's no, what I mean? It's like this is my whole life to I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Because and then the reason for that was because of my birth and childhood, was I had a world-class bad self-image. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. But I was grasping that God could love me because God had to love everybody. So my whole 13 years was an attempt to become in God's grace and to be the best that I could be, and to be worthy of love, and which is what most people who meditate are trying to reach. But it's really a spiritual bypass from facing your pain.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've
So
heard.
that's why you can't there's so many gurus that are assholes, is because they got their God realization, but they didn't take care of their dark night of the soul.
Yeah,
There's plenty of them that are good. They're not usury. They don't have issues. They're authentic and all that kind of stuff. But it's not a guarantee. And what the only thing that is a guarantee is taking care of the dark night of your soul. So that's what happened to me. Is
so what you're kind of saying is rather than you know looking outwards like God, please love me. You started going inwards and finding out how to love and heal yourself.
um yeah, because in a way, when you do meditation on your breath, or you do meditation on your whatever your technique is, it's not really about yourself. you're trying to achieve something, you're trying to reach for something, you're trying to attain something, you're trying to be something, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The last formal meditation I did, I think it was like in 1990 somewhere, is I just went out and sat underneath a tree, and the feeling that I had was absolute not give a fuck. I did not care, and the amount of authentically not caring, I could not meet now. I couldn't meet that level of I don't care, you know. And so I'm sitting there meditating, and basically that space in between falling asleep, I wasn't really even trying to meditate. I could care less about the perfect process or the focus. I didn't care about any of that stuff, right?
Completely let go.
I didn't even let go, because to let go, I would have had to care to let go. It was just, I don't care, you know. It's, you know, and it wasn't with a grudge. It was just like it was kissing, zero interest, zero value, zero anything. Then what happened was, I was looking, you know, my eyes were closed, and all of a sudden the top of my head, like when you close your eyes, you see the top of your head is dark, unless you've got a lot of meditation or something. But most people, you look up and you're inside your head, it's dark or fuzzy or just like little stuff floating around in there. But so I was sitting there leaning up against the tree, you know, nodding off, and, you know, and the whole universe appeared on top of my head. And that was pretty cool.
Sounds
This is before I started doing my healing work. This is what I'm doing. This is all like a really long, aggrandized preface of why language lessens the heart so kick ass. It's because I was coming from this place to that place, and I had some really good concentration. But anyway, so I had this universe inside my head, and the universe talked to me. It said, this is your universe. So I thought, cool, I don't care. You know, all right, that's cool. I did not care at all.
Mm.
And then I look, but I did look around. I was like, you know, I'd look up and I'd go, well, there's no Orion's belt. There's no Big Dipper. This is not this universe, or from this Earth perspective. And I just sat there and I just let the thing be there. And then another voice came along and said, would like you to be the God of this universe. And I sat there and I go, not caring at all. So this is a state of completely not caring, not one shred, not one tiny bit. And there was a kind of a clarity there. And I was thinking, well, whoever's staffing the gods of the universes must have done a shitty job to come and ask me to be the God of this universe. It's like, how bad could that other God been? And then I'm thinking, you know, this human resources for God, right? The human resources that would, you know, that fills the position for God. How incompetent can those guys be, right? I said, no thanks. You know, somebody else. Huh?
Respectfully decline their offer.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, you know, this sounds fishy. You know. However, that didn't exactly get me off the hook, because from then on, for about, again, another 6 weeks or so, as I'm talking to you, I'm looking out my eyes, right? But simultaneously, I see this entire universe inside of my head. And so everywhere I went, there was a universe. There's this two locations. There's a universe that I carried around inside of my head.
Mm.
And then there was, you know, at that time, I was a cabinet guy, a cabinet maker. We made kitchens and stuff and worked on cruise ships and stuff. So I'd be doing these things in the mundane world while I had carried this universe inside my head. And finally it got to me. because of my bad self-image. My whole identity was based upon not being worthy, not good enough, not as good as the next guy, and all this kind of stuff, right?
Mm.
And I finally had to ask it to go because it conflicted with that bad self-image. Because how could somebody who's completely unworthy have their own universe, be the god of their own universe,
Mm.
and at the same time being completely unworthy and everybody's better than me and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. So like, what kind of practices and stuff did you do to heal that and turn that around?
Just told to fuck off. But that was pretty significant. That was pretty significant teaching. I mean, because I'm talking about it now, there was that was a kind of a teaching. Okay, like if you do meditation and you get into the place where you go, oh God, it's all about love. All there is love, right? You get into that feeling of all there is love. Well, all there is love is like a 40-year realization. 4 years later, you're going to get it again. And oh my God, all there is love. And then another level of, all there is, and it's all there is love. You know what I'm saying? Well, that was like what this was.
Yeah.
I'm still talking about it now because it's, of the meaning and implications of it.
It's exactly what happened to me the first night I did ayahuasca, and I took a little book in there with me, and there was like 3 or 4 pages that just said God is love, and everyone I didn't like or things like that. In that moment, I just loved them. I was like, well, they're only that way because of this, because of their trauma, and it was just kind of like working all that out, and it was quite a liberating feeling, really, and like unconditional love for myself, because obviously we can beat ourselves up, can't we?
Yeah. So anyway, then like after that last meditation, I started having this dark night of the soul. I had a girlfriend, and she had 2 houses in Ireland, and the house that I lived in at the time in Florida. And so and her family was rich, and so I spent the same 13 years, spent my summers in Ireland and in Cork, out in West Cork. It's real pretty out there. And so she left me, the cat left me, and I lost my job, and it's like, how could a saint, this was my thing, how could a saint, how could a holy man have all this shit happen to him? You know what I mean? And I really had no clue, because my whole life was about meditation and spirituality and all that kind of stuff. I had no clue about the emotional body, no clue about repressed feelings. I had no clue about any of that stuff. And as in every hero's journey, they have the wise woman. And a wise woman came up to me and said, Michael, you're completely out of touch with your emotional body. And I said, what's that? But my girlfriend at the time, for 12 years, that was pretty. It's kind of like being the baggage handler for the rich and famous. Is kind of what it was. And then I had another girlfriend who was royalty, and so I had all these things, right? It's like, well, how can this stuff be happening to me? And then that was back in the time of primal therapy. So I did some primal therapy, and I took some acting classes, and whatever I was doing, reading books and stuff, and I learned about how to go in and connect to my pain and express my pain. And later on, I did a workshop. I actually taught a workshop. It took a while. It took a couple of years, like 3 years, to go access my pain, feel my pain, embrace my pain, right, and express it. It's a lot of screaming involved. In my opinion, you're not really going to get rid of your pain without emotional expression. That's just not going to happen. We're born crying, and we start dying when we stop crying. Yeah.
And
You can't. Go ahead.
I know you're a big Osho fan, and he created the dynamic meditation, which starts with a lot of that, doesn't it? Kind of just letting you.
Yeah, and before it was that, it was called the chaotic meditation.
Okay.
Yeah, that guy was pretty much on the ball. And at the same time, I was, the follower of the perfect living, perfect master at the time. I knew some of those guys, and they had the same kind of bliss, and maybe even better than I did. So I was trying to like be superior because I was inferior. So I got the guru to so I could be superior. And here these guys were, doing some good things too. Yeah, he was in his own way, he was a holy man because he let people work their shit out. And then under the umbrella of um, of spirituality, and in the end, they they lost the guru, they lost this, they just lost their illusions of spirituality, and all that crap is just gone. Whereas I had to go through the whole 13 years, then get the dark night of the soul, and then you see, and then like let go of all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up in the same place that they did. It just took longer. So that guy was a genius, and and he just let people work out their traumas and dramas and their fantasies and their power trips and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Looking back on it, was hilarious. That guy was brilliant, you know.
I love him
And
to bits.
he was Tantra. He was in the Tantra, which is the opposite of Kriya. Kriya is light, and Tantra is down here, right? So
Yeah, what I like about Osho is mainstream religions very much like, Ten Commandments, things like that. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. Whereas he was a lot more kind of about being sovereign and finding it within yourself, kind of thing.
he was more here again. You have the human being has four parts: spirit, heart, will is in your belly, and then your physical body, right? And each one has a yoga. Hatha yoga is body and breath, right? Then there's Kriya yoga, is for your light. It's like light, music, nectar, and holy name. But it's all can be done up here from the heart up mostly. But Tantra is about the emotionals and Kundalini and power breathing and pulling up the energy and stuff like that. So it's also deep feminine. It's about lust and desire and passion and power and life. So, but that's where emotional healing comes from. It's down there. Your emotional body is in your belly, and that's where the Tantra is. That's why he was, in some ways ahead of the game, because you need to clear all that stuff out before you can do any healing. So, um, I don't know if that explains enough of the background of what it is. What a language lessons of the heart is I took this 13 years of concentration, really good concentration, and I focused in on what was going on inside of me. What was the steps? What was the steps that happened for me to become wounded? And then what were the steps that I did to heal? So language lessons of the heart is like the enlightened man's healing process. But I teach it pretty clean. I don't tell anybody about this whole God stuff and all that. I don't do any of that stuff. I just say you do this and it works, basically, because I don't want to be involved with their karma. I don't want to hear their story. I don't want to hear, it's not mine. It's not for me to coach you or to prompt you. Other people want to do that. That's completely, fine. It's wonderful. And it's a community and all that stuff, helpful and needed. But I understand about karma. As soon as you tell people to do this or that, um, and they believe in you, then you've just taken their power. And when you take their power, that's abuse.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So anyway, it works really good. I have 4 processes: emotion release, judgment, denial release. Um, what are they? Talking to the parts of self. Talking to the parts of self is really kick ass because, like I said, we have 4 parts of self: spirit, heart, will, and body. And they are the ones who record and hold your discord, your trauma and drama. And we don't talk to them. So when you talk to them, then you can have this incredible, heartfelt mentoring and compassion, self-compassion, self-love, and working things out. You know what I mean? So that's really good. And then there's judgment denial release, which is your beliefs. You know, like I'm not good enough is a judgment, right? And that has consequences. That means if something good happens to you, you might not even acknowledge it, right?
Yeah, you're blocked
Because
off.
you're not good enough, you know, you're not good enough to even acknowledge that good things can happen to you. Or, for example, I'm not worthy of love. That's a judgment.
Mm.
But if you leave that judgment there, what does that do to your love life? You're not worthy of love from God. You're not worthy of love from your kids. You're not worthy of love from your mate. You're not worthy of love from, your boss. You know what I'm saying? It just, you're not worthy of sexual love or, it's just what the effect of judgments have on you is just like devastating, you
Yeah.
know? And then if a judgment is like in the court of law, right? The judge says, I accuse you of not being worthy. And I find you what? I find you
Guilty.
guilty,
Mm.
right? A judgment implies guilt, and guilt demands a sacrifice. The
Ah,
judgment implies guilt, and guilt demands a sacrifice. So the sacrifice is you're not allowed love. You can't feel good about yourself. You know, you have to struggle to make things work, or everything that you wanted to do turns to shit,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
That's that's the sacrifice you pay on the altar of guilt because of the judgments. So that's the words that you say, that the toxic, stinking thinking and rotten languages, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a whole process of how to change that. It is basically you install an editing software into yourself of how to recognize, accept, release, replace, right? That's really, really powerful.
So
Yeah.
you do like a lot of mantras or affirmations and self-talk then? Is that part of the process?
The only one I have is I have three empowerments. And one is I'm empowering myself with a strong and loving intent to heal my will. Will you help me? Because what you're healing when you do emotional healing is your will, spirit, heart, will, and body. Will is your emotional body. It's also your seat of power, the deep feminine. You want the mind to understand and the heart to understand that you're here to heal the will. And if mama's not happy, nobody's happy. So the empowerment is I'm empowering myself with a strong and loving intent to heal my will. And the next line is, will you help me? Okay. And then I want to be fulfilled. Will you help me?
When you
That's just,
say who you help me, who are you talking to, yourself or
well,
God?
that's a good one. Let me get to that. I want to be fulfilled. Will you help me? And what was the other one? I want to live. Will you help me? Well, that gets back to um, the ground of being. The ground of being is absolute inclusivity and unconditional love, right? Wounding happens because of absolute exclusivity and conditional love. Mama did this to me and it hurt. That's exclusive. Daddy did this and and I'm ashamed or I'm blamed or whatever, right? That's exclusive. And you can't ask your mom to heal. You can't ask your dad to heal. So what? So you ask the tree, you ask the sun, you ask the spirits, you ask your neighbors, you ask your boss, you ask the archetypes, you ask the whoever, the angels, the gods, right? You ask them to help, right? Because absolute inclusivity and unconditional love. So you, instead of making it exclusive, You just spread out your possibilities for being nurtured and cared for or comforted. You spread it out.
Yeah.
That's really important because it's not you against the other world. The whole world's here to help you. Is the world kind is the world kind and loving, or is the world shunning and shaming? Yeah, because whatever your trauma happens to be, you create a world in there, right?
Yeah.
A world of pain, a world of suffering, a world of inadequacy, a world of shame, a world of
Mhm.
regrets, a world of fear, a world of anger, a world of, you see what I'm saying?
And then do you
And
mean
so what you're doing with the empowerment is you're empowering the world to be helpful and loving and kind and right. Will you help me? I'm healing now. Will you help me? Yeah.
so yeah, is it kind of like law of attraction where you're going from attracting more pain, more hate and whatnot and shifting that to being open and attracting love and being in harmony with people? Or similar?
It is in kind of a roundabout good way. You think of it this way. This is why I recommend people do this 10,000 times. That's like 100 times a day for like 3 months, right? Because the average number of times that a child gets told no in their lifetime. You ever heard of that one?
No, I haven't. It's very
Off. The average time a child is told no, according to certain surveys, is around 56,000 times. But the time they're born to the time they're 18. So that's a lot of no programming. And what you're really saying no to is the will. You know, so pick up your bicycle, don't leave it down. Go take out the garbage, do this, do that, right? No, you can't do that. You can't stay up late. No, you got to clean. You can't do that. Stop working, running around naked. Don't touch yourself. Do this. Stop making banging. Stop making noise. On and on and on and on and on it goes. It adds up over 18 years. So to say, I'm empowering myself with a strong and loving intent to heal my will. Will you help me? 10,000 times. Just it counterbalances, you know. And what as when you're little, you're all will. You don't have logic. You don't have any of that kind of stuff. You're just feeling and expressing and running around and learning and right. Don't touch this. Don't put that in your mouth. Don't, you know, all that kind of negative stuff. So anyway, that really helps. There's the empowerment. Then there's emotion release, and then a judgment and denial release, and talking to parts of the self. And to learn these things, you'll absolutely heal.
yeah. Just going back to what you were saying, have you seen the film Yes Man with Jim Carrey?
Oh yeah, when he's a lawyer, he can only say yes or something like. No, he's not a lawyer. What is he? He's a.
I think he's an accountant, maybe something like that.
Gonna have a little bit of editing to do. Because
So yeah, guys, sorry about that. We've had some internet problems. Well, I have. I'm just talking about the film Yes Man because he's got like a kind of boringish job, office job that he hates.
well, I remember it now, and somehow he gets hooked into having to say yes to everything, and then so he ends up going on all these adventures and.
Yeah, because he says no to everything before that, and it just reminded me of it because maybe in his childhood he was always told no, 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 and that's manifested in his adulthood. I know it's a film character, but you see that happen in life.
Well, okay, then if you have any questions, or because there's a lot of ground I'd like to cover, but we'll see if I can fit it in with what you want to talk about.
But yeah, I've got a few more questions if that's all right, if you've got time.
I've got hours, yeah, because I actually wanted to talk about the um, beginning of the universe and how that's important to what's happening now, and so all this other stuff is pretty much groundwork.
Well, yeah, that ties in perfectly with my next question. So if you don't mind, I just want to introduce it this way because, like I said, I followed you for 4 or 5 years, And then a couple of years later, I thought I want to message you because you had a lot of great ideas and you talked about different predictions and stuff. And the world, people forget because of the mess we're in now that how bad it still was a couple of years ago. And I kind of said, where do you see the future heading? And you were like, oh, if you think it's bad now, wait till the next 7 years. We're going to go through a very difficult time, which has obviously happened. So yeah, do you want to talk about the history and where you see us going in the future?
Well, where we are right now is the end of the age of Kali Yuga, which is interesting. Kali Yuga is supposed to be ending at 2025. And do you know about the story of Kali? And
I've heard little bits. It's like, isn't it like the breath and moving into the different ages, like the bronze, silver, gold age?
right,
And we're coming, we're in
this
the
is
bronze age, are we? And we're
we're
moving.
in the Iron Age, which is the darkest age.
Okay, yeah.
Um, the whole story about that is and why that seems uh, there's this guy, what is it, Shiva. Shiva has a devotee, right?
Yeah.
And devotee loves him, and there have been long-term relationships. His best devotee, and the devotee says, "I want to ask a boon," right? And Shiva is like somewhere between a Christ and a god, Brahma or something. He's like a really up there, right? So he says, "I'd like a boon, a gift." And he said, my gift is that I can't be killed on heaven and earth. I can't be killed by this or that, and and so Shiva says, okay, you know, and then this guy goes off, right? And he's still a devotee of Shiva, but he starts getting darker and darker because he knows he can't be killed and he can't have any consequences, and he becomes a demon lord, a demon king, and he gathers up a demon army and he wreaks havoc on the world. And then they're raping and pillaging and eating and suffering and torturing and all this kind of horrible stuff. I don't know if this sounds like today or not,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So there's Shiva, and Shiva had a wife named Durgaji, right? And Durgaji was the epitome of the loving mother goddess. She was the most loving, most kind mother, but she was also a warrior kind of, right? So they had this demon war, right? There was the all these demons were attacking all the people of the Godhead, and so Durga gathers up all the women, the goddesses, and all the different kind of goddesses that there were, and they went off to fight. I mean, first it was Shiva who tried to fight all the demons, but because he made the demon king, every time he'd kill all the demons, then the demon king would bring them back to life, and it was like all that kind of mess. It was a mess, right?
Right now.
So then Durga gets in there and she starts to try to kill all the demons. It was like elephants and rhinoceros and people riding in on tigers, and it was like it's a real mess, right? And then okay, and then but nobody could kill this demon king. It was just too much, right? It's too much. So Durga, the most loving, motherly, they were all her kids, and she was suffering, and she was angry, and she was pissed off, and out of her third eye projects out her rage. And her rage manifested in the form of Kali. And Kali was dark, black. She's the darkness of space. And her body had stars on it. Okay, so she's the darkness of space. And her dress was severed arms. Severed arms. She had a little dress of severed arms. and she had a necklace of skulls.
I think I've seen the image somewhere.
Right. And then she has these four arms, and she's like gonna kill. She's gonna kill the demon king. So that goes on fights. She deals, but she's her actual aspect is time. So Durga gets off of her uh, leopard or her lion or whatever she's riding, and then she projects uh, Kali, and Kali is the manifestation of of rage from the mother's love. So the demons went and were drinking the blood of the children, right, and and made the children into the demon army, right, and and it was that poison blood that happened. So eventually, she kills the the demon king by cutting off his head. His magic was, if a drop of his blood fell on the ground, another demon would form. So you couldn't kill him, right? So what she did is she cut off his head and then put a bowl under his head so it would drip into this bowl, and then she drank. She took the and uh, Rudolf Steiner. Thoughts are electric, and feelings are thought is of the nerve, and feelings is of the blood. So the will is of the blood. So when you drink the blood or your blood relations, that's the will. That's the great mother. That's the energy. That's the emotional connection. So anyway, she's raging, and she's the destroyer of worlds, because she's in her aspect of time. Everything falls to time. Mountains fall to time. Oceans dry up. Everything is subject to time. It disintegrates. So then Shiva has to lay down prostrate underneath her to stop her raging, because Kali was the aspect of Durga's love. And so when she stepped on Shiva, she remembered the love she had for Shiva, and then she kind of snapped out of it. That's what's going on. I don't know if you noticed, but this whole plot is so much like what's going on right now. You know what I mean? And down to adrenochrome and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Drinking baby's blood and demons, and you know what I'm saying? And then preying on children and abducting children, and you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, satanic ritual and all that.
Satanic, demonic, yeah. Anyway, so that's what's happening now. Is Kali's around doing her thing. That's why I'm saying it may not be completely finished until 2025, but we're right in the middle of the bringing the children back. Bringing the stop the importing the drug the blood drinking stuff. But the whole point of all this, and it wasn't just Kali, okay? When you go to the Ramayana was this big war between the good and evil, right? And it involved demons and the Sasquatch looking people who were Hanuman, right? And that whole thing going on. And I don't know if you noticed, but we've got Sasquatch all over the United States, and everybody's got Sasquatch groups, and you don't have that. And you have Sasquatch in the UK, Sasquatch in Ireland. Anyway, I think that's funny. And then you go, this whole demon war thing, right? Then you go to Buddha. And remember what was going on with Buddha in that story under the tree. You remember what happened there?
I'm not sure.
So he's sitting there. This guy's, you could see every bone in his body, because he was in austerity, and he'd given up on life and given up on trying, right? So he's just underneath this tree, and he's like, he's going to just die, right? Or reach enlightenment. And as he's like just on the verge of reaching enlightenment or dying, this demon king comes to him, and starts talking to him and offering him girls and offering him this wealth and offering him all this kind of stuff and all the worldly possessions and comforts and all this kind of stuff. So he's having this whole confrontation with the demon, right? And eventually says, no, I am here, I am me. And says, earth is my witness. He's sitting on the earth, sitting against the tree, sitting on the earth, connects to the earth and says, I'm here, because of the earth, I'm here. I'm here because of the earth. And he kind of reached enlightenment, and then the demons went away. And when he awoke, all of the earth's creatures awoke with him, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it was still a demon conflict.
Mm.
Then you go to Bhagavad Gita, right? And Bhagavad Gita is a story of a war between families, the demons in your own family, right? And so the whole Bhagavad Gita is about the moral approach to why, or all the reasons why you should kill your family. You know what I mean? Because they stole the woman, they stole the girl, and whatever.
Mm.
Then you go to Christ, right? And Christ said, they say, I come in peace. And he says, I come with a sword. I come to pit the father against the son, and the daughter against the mother, and the daughter-in-law against the mother-in-law, right? With a sword, he says. You have to kill them, right? So what we're talking about is emotion release. What we're talking about is a struggle with the self. What we're talking about is the hero's journey. What we're talking about is to make the world right, because our world that we have out here is the world that we carry in here, right?
Like overcoming the darkness that lives within us, or is that what you mean?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. And you do that by a lot of screaming and shouting and killing and cutting off heads and stuff like that. And that's what I teach, right?
Metaphorically, of course.
No, imaginarily.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not metaphor, but it's imaginary.
Yeah.
So, which is what a memory is. A memory is the imagination of what happened in the past based on facts, right? So that's what I teach, and that's why it's so powerful. Now let's talk about what healing, what a wound is. What is the actual wound? You ever thought about that?
Not deeply, not the word
Yeah.
itself for what it is.
Well, what a wound is, all wounding, all adversity, childhood problems, anything, girlfriends, whatever, is undischarged traumatic stress. Undischarged traumatic stress. Hurt, pain, guilt, shame, sorrow, grief. It's all undischarged traumatic stress. The results of the fight or flight, the results of, of abuse, neglect, mental abuse, mental neglect, physical abuse, physical neglect, uh, alcohol, drugs, fights, and different kinds of incarceration. These are the things that cause trauma, right, from the parent to the child. So the word undischarged. So what is a charge? Charge is it's like a recording. It's just like a battery.
Mm.
It's like a battery recording. It's like a holding of energy.
Yeah.
A charge is a holding of energy, and you have to discharge that. You can't talk to it. You can't think about it. You can't analyze it. You can't change. You can't pretend it. You can't sage it. You can't crystallize it. You can't eat it. You know what I mean? You can't eat it away. You can't yoga it.
Mm.
You have to discharge it. If you don't discharge it, so think of us as like recording devices. The Akashic records. Remember that guy that I would get up the time and you saw this the life review.
Yeah.
right? From birth to death, the life review. That's your record. That's where the recording is. And somewhere in the early childhood, you have a recording of this shame and this wound and this neglect and this abandonment, right? You have these charges that becomes a recording of an image that becomes a nation inside you. So you have an image nation, imagination inside of you. And this image nation is what's called a principality, right? Which is biblical if you wanted to go biblical. So you have a principality, and these principalities make up your world. Kali is destroyer of worlds. You know what I'm saying? It's not this world. It is this world.
Yeah.
Where the demons dwell, the parental demons, the bullies who bullied you, the people who shamed you. They are the demons of your inner world. And unless you confront them and discharge that scenario, you become the hero in that hero's journey. And the hero starts off being crushed, and he loses his girl, he loses his dream, and then he has to build up his skills, right, and learn from the wise ones and go on little quests and stuff, and then builds up this energy, and then he fights the dragon or he fights the demon. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then he discharges his charge. He discharges his traumatic stress. He wins, becomes the hero, becomes the king of his kingdom, which is inside. The kingdom is inside. And he clears out. What is he clears out is this image nation, which is the principalities of his world. And then he becomes sovereign. And that gets you back to what I started at the beginning, which was, we are gods and we are children of the Most High. But the next line in the Bible goes, and yet you die as a prince. To die as a prince means you have never discharged your enemies, and you've never received your kingship. You've never become a king of your own kingdom. You never become the God of your universe, inner universe.
Yeah. So when you talk about chopping off heads, you mean killing your trauma, basically, in a way.
Yeah. Well, there's your father, the mother, the abuser out in the 3D world. And they get imprinted into you, and you carry with them. So you carry them, and they formulate your worldview. The world is hard. The world is abusive. I have to be afraid, or I'm going to be raped and hurt, and, you know, I'm going to be rejected, and right. That's your worldview. So when you go in there and you kill, here's what you have to do. You have to kill the abuser, kill his mother, his father, his grandparents, kill his town, kill his country, destroy his world by blowing up that whole world. And then you find the God that created that world and you kill him. That's a God killer, right?
Yeah.
And in that way, you can see the whole world, the whole scenario that was created inside of you is cleared out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just do it as many as, usually you don't only have to do this a few times before you actually get it. When your emotional body gets it, that what's bothering the emotional body is the recording of the events. The recording is the discharge, is the charge, right? When you discharge the charge, it's gone. Like it never happened. Flat tire on your car, and it's a big problem. As soon as you change the tire on the car and you start driving again, it's like it never happened. That's what real healing is. When you have real healing, nothing happens. Nothing. No, there's no relief. There's no gratitude. It's nothing. You're just back into living mode again, but without the regrets and the fears and the anxieties and the suppressions and you don't have any of that stuff. Just like you don't have the flat tire anymore. Who cares? You know what I mean? You'll be happy for a day or two, but then you're driving your car, then you're living your life. Nothing happened. Right?
Yeah, I love that way you've explained it. Makes it easy for anyone to kind of understand. And
And it's not easy. This whole thing is not easy. But it's all based on healing your will. And until you get to know that you will, and you like think of it this way, what your will is, what a wound is a child who has been shocked, cut, beaten, abused, and starved. And she is residing within inside of you in that state, unaddressed, unacknowledged, unembraced, unhelped, unloved. And as soon as you understand that your job is to love that child back into strength and wholeness and beauty and grace by your act of compassion, of reaching down into your past and into your inner child and embracing her and bringing her back to life, is birth, death, and resurrection of your will. As soon as you understand that you're healing your will, and your will is what holds this recording. Your will is what holds your pain for you. Because when you were little, this pain was too much. So it had to go down into repression called denial so that you could play with your friends and go to school and whatever, right? And if it's too much, you bifurcate, your mind splits in fragments. And the numbers are, drum roll please. The numbers are right now in the United States is around 66% of everybody has traumatic stress. That means
number.
that they're taking psychoactive drugs for fibromyalgia, for depression, for anxiety, for panic attacks, for not being able to sleep or sleeping too much, and all this. It's like millions of different drugs that they can be taking, or they're binge drinkers. They're the good old guys. They're binge drinkers, right? And
That was
they,
me
they,
for a long
they work
time.
during the week, and then at weekend they just blot themselves out. This is 66%, right? We're in this pandemic of undischarged traumatic stress is worse than the COVID thing, really.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree with that. So yeah, on that topic, we've talked about the past. What do you think will happen come say 2025? Do you think like these power structures and whatever will sort of dissolve and start to bring in a new world, or how do you see it playing out?
I'm not really sure. In the end, we win
Mm.
because remember, going back to the beginning of our conversation, we're infinite and immortal, and what was never created. We are energy beings. So all this stuff that's happening is a movie, and it's a recording, and it's recording onto us for lessons or whatever, right? So we can't actually be wounded. We can't actually be permanently damaged. It's like if you have like a tape recorder. I remember they all have the old tape recorders where you play music on a tape recorder as a tape that rolls around. You can damage the tape. You can erase it, or it can get old, or it can get worn out. But you just put in a new tape, and it's good, right? You can't actually hurt it.
Mm.
It's tape. It's just recording on it. It's a recording on dust on a little piece of film. That's all it is. All this stuff is. You know what I mean? So which is important to know. And it's also important to know that we come from absolute inclusivity and unconditional love. So that's where we're headed, right? Anything that is exclusive is less than that, right? Anything that is conditional love is less than that. And we're kind of learning that in a grandiose way, that you have to be inclusive, because in reality, there's there is no you and me. There's only me. There's only one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
The Sufis say, "Are you God in hiding?" When they meet each other, two Sufis meet each other, they say, "Are you God in hiding?"
so yeah, don't they say that kind of in Hindu texts that God lives within inside you.
Yeah. So does Christian text.
Mm.
Here's a Sufi prayer. You want to hear a Sufi prayer?
Yeah, love to.
I love myself. I honor myself. I kneel to myself and I worship myself. For I know God dwells within me as me.
Beautiful.
Can you repeat that one?
My memory's no good.
Let me try it again.
Let's do it one sentence at a time.
I love myself.
I love
I
myself.
honor myself.
Honor myself.
I kneel to myself
I kneel to myself.
and I worship myself.
And I worship myself.
For I know God dwells within me as me.
For I know God dwells within me as me.
That's so you take that prayer and you put it over to the Sufi welcome. When they see each other, one says to the other, "Are you God in hiding?" And the other one doesn't answer because there's only one God.
Mm.
So there's only one. There's no two.
No
Which
separation.
brings us to the God barrier. We have a God barrier. And that is we put God outside of ourselves, right? And then we worship God. We put the devil outside of ourselves and we're afraid of the devil. Yeah. But we put God outside of ourselves and we reach for God. We put enlightenment outside of ourselves and we reach for enlightenment. We put peace outside of ourselves, and that's something that we reach for. And this externalization of these goals is a barrier to reaching the goals. This is the problem with with the law of attraction.
Mm.
And this is what the law of attraction is based on. There is no external. There is no future.
Mm.
There is no goal. And if you have a goal, you have a future, you have an external, then you're never going to reach it. It has to be now, the feeling of now, right?
Yeah.
So in the beginning, before there was matter, there was just the void. What they call the void, and one of the definitions of the void was chaos. So you look in the darkness of space with no stars, and in that there was this stuff called chaos. And what the chaos was the great mother of everything. It was darkness and stillness, but inside of her there was yearnings and churnings and wonderings and reachings, willings, wishings, and wants. So this is on a vast scale with no central location and no consciousness, because consciousness is the feeling of energy. And because this stuff didn't have energy, it had wants and wishes and wills and contraries. And so there's stillness and movement. When you have stillness and movement, that's what creates energy, right? Think of a generator.
Mm.
Generator has magnets that don't move. And then you take a coil and spin it around, right? Inside this magnetic field. And the magnetic is representatives of will, wish, and want. And the will is our emotional body, right? I will, I wish, I want, right? I need. This is a whole physicality, right? So the generator moves, but in space, it's not the generator that moves. It is the will, the wish, the want, the wondering, you know what I mean? That's what's going on out there. So All of the bad self-images and all the good self-images and all the stuff having to do with women and the feminine, that was what was going out that, and that's why it was called the chaos. Now the chaos create also willing, wishing, wanting is that reaching. Remember the arms on Kali. The arms on Kali was the reaching. You reach out. When you reach, what you reach for, right, becomes what hurts you, right? Go back to Buddha. All life is suffering, right? And the suffering is caused by desire. Desire is what you reach for, right? And this is what's going on. This is what started the universe, the desire, the will, the wish that I want. Still there's no body, still there's no location, still there's no identity, there's no I am. But this energy started to move. And once the energy started to move, then there could be consciousness, but it was still pre-consciousness because it didn't have a location. The location is I am, okay? This is, you're thinking in the vastness of space, hundreds and trillions of light years across, okay? Then the energy started to move, and when the energy started to move, it was electric. And when electricity moves, it becomes magnetic. It has a magnetic sheath. The magnetic, so the electric is the masculine, the magnetic is the feminine. And think of something, think of magnetic, rivers of electric life force energy moving across the universe, right? And it's contained by a magnetic field. And you can look it up. Look at magnetic fields in galaxies, magnetic fields in superclusters of galaxies. And you can see these rivers of magnetic fields. And in that magnetic field is this electric current. Now, when you, and it's like a river of electricity, but it's also consciousness and life force. What happens is the magnetic field, which is the will, the wish, the want, sometimes the magnetic field gets stronger. And when it gets stronger, it compresses. So you have something like 1,000 light years across, and it gets compressed down to 100 light years across, right? And what this does is takes the volume of electricity and makes it denser. And that increases the amperage, increases the power in a smaller space. And at a certain point, it reaches ignition. When it reaches ignition, it explodes. And when it explodes, this invisible dark matter, dark energy, life force, when it explodes, that is the emergence of God. Okay? And later on in physicality, that is the emergence of stars, because wherever this magnetic field is, wherever these things pinch down, that's what creates the stars and galaxies. But the first one was a compression of the life force energy that was moving because of the chaos, because of the will, wish, and want, which is the woman, created light, the light of life, which was God. My God is the living God. God is the God of life. The light and the life are one, right? So it's a light of life. Okay, I don't know if you follow all that stuff, because this took a couple of trillion years to happen. But once the light was ignited from the Great Mother's desire, the light pushed out into the darkness. No, the mother wanted a companion. She wanted an other. She wanted a mate. She wanted a connection. She wanted something more than just being loneliness, right? So she wanted that. So when this explosion of light happened, the first thing that happened was the destructive explosion of life, the destruction, right? The damaging. And this hit the mother, boom, and hit the mother and started to kill her, right? And pushed her away because this light was filling up the whole universe. It was just an enormous living light that filled up the whole universe. And she fell back and fell back and fell back. And the first damaging light, the damaged light, was Lucifer. And Lucifer, it was when God emerged from the darkness and took form as light. The first light was Lucifer, and Lucifer was rage of, you had no right to do this. Get away, you're murdering me. I don't want to wake up. I'll kill you. I'll eliminate you. You're evil, right? Because it was the darkness, and that's what hit her. And where it hit her was in the heart, in her heart, of the unborn future child that she would have, and all of the future children that she would have. And she fell to her death. And her death was so painful. This was so painful for her because of the first contact with who she was wishing and wanting to love, the night, the shining light on the hill, right? The great masculine energy, right? She was falling to her death. That pain was so great, she didn't want her children to have that light, to have that pain. It was too much for her. So she covered up the pain of her own death inside of her. Okay. And that's where we are now. From this, you get date rape, you get man and woman abuse, you get heartlessness, you get all the evil that was created in the world was because of this explosion into consciousness, into light, and the first light was Lucifer. And then that pain of the mother who was she was generating, remember, she generated the light, and then that light killed her, right? It basically killed her, and she fell. And when she did that, she covered up the pain. And that is why we suffer death. Our death is a slowing down of energy until you die. Okay. But in this dynamics, what happened was when God awoke, right? First of all, he couldn't see any light. All he saw was, he couldn't see any darkness. All he saw was his light. And this perturbance that he had of waking up out of reverie, which was the void. He was in the void in meditation, right? To come out of that reverie, he didn't want to come out of that reverie, and his rage went out before him and did this damage to the mother of everything. That's why we have this issue between men and women, and men are seen as superior to women, and women are second grade, and children are even worse, and all that kind of stuff. All those issues that we have came from this. So date rape, women are no good, this all the stuff that manifests evil in our life is caused by this inequality, or the hatred towards the mother, hatred towards the woman, the not acknowledging her value, because God could not see her value. And this was in the first creation. Okay, we're in the second creation now. This all happened in the first creation, which is the first emergence. And in this you had 4 principles. You had basically 5 principles. You had God and Lucifer, right? And then you had the mother of everything. And inside the mother of everything, you had the heart of creation, which is most people think of as Christ, right? And then the other one you had was the father of manifestation, which is God's body. So the Father, God of form, and the heart of creation, right? That is our spirit, our heart, our will, and our body, form. Everything is the form of, comes from the Father manifestation. So what happened was, this is before the Godhead was created, right? What happened was these are the players, and God did not have a childhood, and Lucifer did not have a childhood. He just went to instant beingness. And this thing about Lucifer is he didn't even recognize Lucifer, because Lucifer went back inside him, just like when your rage goes out and then you bring it back in. So he didn't even acknowledge Lucifer, right? And Lucifer was just sitting there. But Lucifer was imprinted with, I'm the first light, I'm the first voice, I'm the God of creation. That's where Lucifer comes in. Keep in mind, while I'm talking about the beginning of creation, that we have Luciferian cults, satanic worshipers, killing of kids, okay?
Mm.
And this, what I'm saying is, this stuff echoes all the way back to the beginning of creation. And this is important to know, because what we're doing now is, what we heal now, what we reach now, is in the second creation and the beginning of the third creation. We're in the beginning of the third creation, is God is doing his healing work, because he cannot exist. Because remember, the mother of everything generated the light. And without her generating the light, his creation turns to shit. It doesn't work. A man cannot generate life by himself. He needs the woman, or else no life actually happens. All he does is survive and be, you know, whatever he does, like a caveman or something. But, you know, I mean, it's not really what it's all about. So it took a long time for God's light to dim, because the mother was in bad shape. She was like beyond able to even wish and want or have love or any of that kind of stuff. She was shot out, and everything calmed down. When everything calmed down, the magnetic shifting stopped. And when that stopped, then the electric current slowed down. And when electric current slowed down, God's light started to dim and dim and dim and dim and get colder. So the beginning of the second creation, which was the creation of the Godhead, is when he went and to find the mother and embrace her, and you know, and then the first time he started. What happened is, he actually started to sink. He lost his place in this magnetic field. It dissipated and it lost its place, and he fell down, and eventually he found her. And when he found her, it was a real gentle touch, right? And then her energy ignited his again, and he kind of understood, and then sort of brought her back to life, and he brought back to life, and that began the beginning of the Godhead, because the first child of them, the first child of the father and the mother, was heart, the heart of creation, which we think of as Christ. And there's other beings out there, but basically that's the archetype, is Christ. Christ, who had been hit in the heart himself. Okay, it's a long roundabout explanation, but you need to know that everything that's going on now is completely connected to God and the Godhead, because there is no other, right? We're all gods in hiding.
Mm.
Okay, this brings us to the number one issue on earth now. There's just two actually. The number one issue on earth is heartlessness. Things done without heart. All the crime, all the corruption, all the greed, all the pain, all the suffering, it all is a manifestation of heartlessness, of heart not being present. Okay?
Yeah.
Parents not being good parents to their children, and bullies and wars and dictators and psychopaths and narcissists, and all this stuff is just heartlessness. Government's not taking care of the people, creating perpetual war. That's heartlessness. We only have one real issue, and that's heartlessness. But the heartlessness comes from and is generated by not having a good childhood, not having a nurturing good childhood. And if you go back to the beginning of creation, where this explosion happened, right? God didn't have a chance to start small and grow and mature and come to realize himself and become who he's meant to be. He just exploded. So he had no childhood, and Lucifer had no childhood, right? And this went on, okay? This went on until, here's how it goes. It goes God, and then God and the mother, right? And every time they get together, they manifest something. And the first thing they manifest was the Christ consciousness, was the heart of creation, the heart of the universe. So God, the mother, get together, heart of the universe. Then it was the upper angel, the what it was, the ancient ones that guard the light, right? They were a race of beings. They're just kind of around God. There's like these kind of godlike figures. And then it was the upper archangels, then the archangels, then the first, second, third, and fourth order of emergence of angels, and then the cherubs and seraphims. And then after them came all the orders of earth spirits, of manifested spirits. They were called the rainbow spirits. There was all the different colors. And the last ones were the Rona Locos, which were the black people. So it wasn't until the way it was meant to be, right, was the father and mother gets together, they love each other, and they love the child, yeah, and they could grow and nurture the child, and it's like it's a big deal. It's, it's wonderful, right? That's the way it's meant to be. That didn't happen until like, it doesn't really happen so much in the animal kingdom, but it's the hints of it are there until human beings got there, right? And that happened after the fall from heaven, the fall from grace. And what happened in the Godhead was each one of these emergence of each one of these beings was like an orgasm, was like a manifestation. But remember, heart had issues. So that's how Lucifer could get in there, and because there wasn't really enough heart presence to hold it all together, it started to become like our society. We had assholes, we had people backbiting, and all this kind of stuff was going on there. And that's why you had some of the angels went towards Lucifer, and all these angels had identity fucking problems because there was no females there. There was just males. So they didn't like, who do you love? Is a homosexual thing, or what do you do? Or do they take up the daughters of some other class of people, right? Because the first two sexes didn't happen until the cherubs and seraphim. Anyway, all that stuff happens. Anyway, I don't know if I'm clear enough, or maybe I should just cut it off here. But everything that happens to us is in the direct flow from the first creation to the second creation there was a war in heaven, by the way. There was a war in heaven. It was also a domestic dispute. It was a domestic violence. And then the great mother of everything, her identity came and ended up on earth. And that's why earth is such a cool place, because this is Mother Earth, which happens to be the wife and mother of God. And that's why all the ETs come and hanging around, like trying to figure out how to fix this thing. But the good news is that God has figured out that he was an asshole, and God has figured out that he was involved. He for this whole time, right, from the beginning of earth, from the beginning of the Godhead, God wasn't taking responsibility for his creation. He was saying, you people are being rebellious. You people aren't doing what I wanted. You say he was like, he didn't see that his denials of his rage and his suffering and his Luciferian involvement and his hand of creating wars, the war in heaven, the first fight happened was like the devastation of the mother, was like a war, the battle of the sexes. The second war in heaven happened over Christ and happened over the mother. It was like a domestic violence. And then that got imprinted in everybody. And since then, it's been almost like continuous war here on earth. You know what I'm saying? That's not us. That was from the energy of that was imprinted from the first creation to the second creation until now, who we are. So it's kind of a big deal when you stop war, even for a weekend. You know what I mean? Because it gives people a chance to heal. And that's kind of like one of the side effects of the Donald Trump thing. I'm just trying to catch you up to how emotional healing is connected to everything, and and including exactly what's happening now, right?
Uh,
Inner child is a suffering. It's the suffering of an inner child is in the subconscious, which is in the underground tunnels of our own subconscious. We have, and we use that pain and suffering to become an artist, or become a magnet, or become powerful, or become whatever, right? We're using that pain of that broken child to aggrandize our life. We don't address that so that we can be our persona. You see what I'm saying? It's the same shit
yeah.
that's going on out here is going on inside of us. We just don't recognize the connection. Our people who are suffering in the street is our own fear and rage and our own suffering, right? So we suppress and deny our own suffering, or fear of being poor or being homeless, and those rich people push down on that so hard that it actually manifests out into the actual suffering of starving people. Everything's connected.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, in the long story short, I don't know if you can follow all this stuff. It's a bit much to take in. But the long story short is, in the 1940s, God figured out that he had to take responsibility for everything and stop blaming us, his creation. Remember that
After the
time of the
second,
flood and all that stuff? Oh, you guys are all messed up, so I'm going to kill you all and all that, right? Well, in the 1940s, he saw that he was involved in this World War II business, and that he had to change because he saw his denied rage in Hitler. Hitler was a manifestation of God's denied rage. So Hitler was God denied rage. And then the denied rage of all these Luciferian shit going on. He had to take responsibility for it. And that was the beginning of psychology. And that was the beginning of emotional healing work on the planet. Remember? Freud, Jung, and all those guys in the 1940s figuring all that kind of stuff out. Yeah. So we've got a lot of help. So it's this whole convergence of a whole lot of stuff. But you have to, it's important to break that God barrier, that it's not me and then God out there. God is in me as me. So what I heal inside of me is God's final healing. And this is important to know because everything is already done in the Godhead. It's done deal, right? God and the mother are back together. Heart's getting his heart fixed. Why do I say Hart had issues, right? Remember, Christ got himself crucified. Here's the Son of God getting himself crucified. This is not normal.
we've killed a lot of our prophets, haven't we?
Yeah, it's like prophets take a beating. Everybody takes a beating, And then one of the last incarnations that he had was Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King got himself shot. He knew he was going to get shot, and he got himself shot. That's heartlessness.
Mm-hmm.
That's because we haven't had heart healed, and we haven't had heart healed because God didn't heal his heart and his wife's heart, his mate's child's heart. He's been the absent father. Like we have absent God, or a God that doesn't look. England's a good example. They're fed up. Well, fuck this God shit. I mean, it's like, well, I don't even play that game anymore. They don't care. You know what I mean? They don't care about religion. They don't care about God. It's just as better be atheist. People fucking hate God, hate him with a fucking passion.
Yeah.
And because they say, well, why is there suffering? Why is there cancer? Why is there disease? Why is there war and poverty? And why is there all this oppression and communism and mass murder? You know what I mean? Because at some point you got to say, let God's involved in it. And we teach ourselves, oh, it's man, it's not God, it's man. It's like, so we put it off on God, we become powerless, or we take it on ourselves, and but we still isolate from God. No, there is no separation, no separation. Remember, the ground of being is absolute inclusivity and unconditional love. And if it's not inclusive, that means there's me, there's you, there's God, there's all these other things. These are all these separate entities. That's not the truth. There's only one. Yeah, it's inclusive. I have to include everything inside of me. My pain is the pain of all creation.
So do you mean kind of like we need to take responsibility for what's happening around us because we're part of it?
No, you can recognize that that's you, but you have to take responsibility for what is inside you, right? It is your kingdom, your Godhead. The kingdom of heaven is within, and you find what is Luciferian inside you, what is traumatic inside you, what is suffering inside you, what is perpetuated, what is the generational trauma, right? What is the ancestral trauma? Get rid of that stuff, and when you heal that, basically what you do, what you are is, of all the rays of light, you're that one ray of light, and when you heal yourself, you repurify that light back to its factory settings. But that connection, because of quantum physics, right? Particles are connected. It's called entanglement. Particles connected are called entanglement. It's two kinds of entanglement. One entanglement is natural entanglement, right? And the other one is discord, entangled discord. And entangled discord is what we suffer from. So when you balance out, you discharge your charge, right? Undischarged traumatic stress. When you discharge your charge, you clean all that stuff out, right? Then you get back to natural entanglement. And that natural entanglement is connected to all the natural people, all the people in the world. So what we're seeing now is I don't know if you how wide of a scope you have with the healers on the planet, but there's all kind of healing modalities, all kind of Reiki kind of stuff, all kind of chakra cleaning, and all kind of past life regression, and all that kind of stuff, right? This is the result of the stuff we were doing in the 90s and the 80s when we started doing our healing work. Is that God's final healing radiates out, and now it's like every rock and telephone has got healers on it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Because that's what's going on. We're actually healing our godlike energy inside of us, and that's why it's a really cool thing to do. And that's also why you can't tell anybody to do it.
Yeah.
And it's really dirty pool to say, oh, you're going to get a martini with a little with a little umbrella on it, and you're going to be sitting on the beach when you heal. That's fake as fuck. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
All you're going to do is have the car running right. Step on the brakes and the gas pedal and the steering wheel and the wheels. They're all running good. That's what you're going to get without pain. The end of suffering and the return of life, loving life. That's what the result is. Remember when we were kids, we loved life? That's all you get. That's pretty good, but you don't get the vacation in Tahiti. That's not what it's about. You don't get fireworks. Yeah.
Nice, mate. That's a really nice way to end it. I think you've explained that in a lot of detail. I'm gonna have to watch it back because there's a lot in there. But,
yeah, I'm really glad I got a chance to say this because you ask, well, how does this guy know this?
Mm.
Well, think of a remote viewing, right? Think of remote viewing. You've heard of that, right? Remote viewing.
Can you just explain to my guests what it is? Because I know you explained it to me on the phone.
Okay, remote viewing is a business, right? And the business is to see into the future and see into the past and to different locations, and you can record what's going on. If you get 5 people in a remote viewing and they have this, and they're trained a little bit, right? They can have a 95% success rate where you can see into the future or see into the past or into now in any location on Earth or in outer space. So the way that works is, that it's like a double blind thing. There's the guy who wants to know the information. He has the thought in his head, and he writes down a bunch of numbers and gives it to another guy, and another guy doesn't know what's in that thing and doesn't even know what the topic is, and he hands it to each one of the remote viewers. So those three guys back is the guy who asked the question, and they go about making drawings and figuring stuff out and feeling right, and then they have a whole picture of what it is, like a submarines in Russia, or a gold mine in Siberia, or or a coup that's going to go on, and they got all stuff figured out. You can see the future, you can see the past in any location in time and space. Now, how does remote viewing work? And this is like a couple of $1 billion a year industry, because the mining people use remote viewers, the politicians use remote viewers, the military uses remote viewers, and archaeologists use them, treasure hunters use them. You see what I'm saying? And people want to predict the future, they all use these remote viewers. So that's why it's big money. It's stocks going up and down. They'll tell you.
I might have to retrain.
But Liffy, I listened to this interview from one of the leaders of the remote viewers. He said, they call it remote viewing, but it's not remote and it's not viewing. He said it's a feeling inside. So every single human, and the thing about remote viewing, the reason why it's a low fruit on the tree, is every single person ever tested can do remote viewing with this protocol. It's like universal. So that means inside me, a feeling inside of me can be in any place and any time, right? Backwards in time, forwards in time, any place on Earth, any place on Mars, any place on the sun, any place in the universe, any place in the galaxy, and any time. And that's how I know what I know. It's a memory.
Yeah.
I have a memory. It's a memory of what actually happened. And the reason why, like, I go back to like this meditation thing, is when I went inside of me and I looked at what happened, and I followed it back and followed it back and followed it back. It always ended up in the Godhead, and then it ended up, then this whole memory of the first creation and the memory of the second creation, which is the Godhead, and then the earth. I think we're going to go into the third creation, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so that's how it works.
Amazing, very powerful tool. Now
remote viewing, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the point, and the reason why it works is because of absolute inclusivity. There's no place that we're not included. There's no place we're not connected to. There's no time that we're not connected to. That's the ground of being, is absolute inclusivity and unconditional love. Okay, that's the ground of being. And from that, I'm connected to you, and I'm connected to all the people who listen, and all of my fans and friends and people who hate me. I'm connected to all of them, because there's really only one thing. Niels Bohr said one time, he said the number of minds in the universe is one. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So, and we have this thing called the Akashic Records, which has the record of everything. It's recorded. Right? We're like a recording device.
Mm.
And what's good is what blocks the memory is pain. When we have pain, and when we deny it, we suffocate it, we suppress it. When we suppress our pain, we suppress our memory, because suppression you can't just suppress pain, it suppresses everything, right? So it represses your past, represses your future, represses everything, so you can't have access to it. Denial is, that's the way denial works. But as soon as when you go into your own pain, when you go into your own suffering, when you look at the darkness, and you heal it, you get your memories back. That's how it works. You get your memories back of who you are, what's going on in the world. And gradually, that's what's happening here. We're actually seeing that with the internet and everything, and it's people are getting their memories back. Oh, I had a lifetime in Egypt. Oh, I think I was in France at one other lifetime, and they're getting their memories back. You say, I have a past life. I had a past life regression, and oh, this happened, you know. And you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're getting our memories back. Yeah. So maybe I'm just a little bit like a couple of days ahead of the curve, maybe. But I'm not any better than anybody. Everybody's got this. You know what I mean? And the reason why I'm bringing this forward now is because if you have this understanding of the first creation, the second creation, and that we are involved, we are engaged in God's final healing, right? Then a whole lot of shit makes sense. Like I said, all the stuff that goes on in the political world, the coronavirus, the adrenochrome, the Satanists, and all that kind of stuff, it all makes sense, right? But pretty much only from this perspective, because if you start taking it apart and looking at it individually, instead of it's all one thing, it's like really confusing, you know?
Yeah. So it's kind of like, broadening out and looking at it as a whole picture rather than...
This is one of the biggest pictures you can look at it as, you know what I mean?
The biggest, as far, isn't it? Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And there's hope there, you know, because the ground of being is absolute inclusivity and unconditional love. That means we live in a loving universe. That means it's going to go back to a loving universe. And if this whole drama that's happened in the first creation and the second creation is what it takes for God to grow up, you know, and recover his childhood, then that's we can't imagine what's going to actually happen, because it's as much darkness as there is right now. There is incredible amount of light. There's a whole organizing, rejuvenation of people who are going to take care of kids in a dramatically, radically different way. There's the whole ACEs connection people, the people who are, you know, changing their communities to bring about healing towards kids and living and making them so they're not traumatized. It's going to be a whole different reality than what we have now.
I'm having a child in May, actually. My first child.
Congratulations. One of the things that'd be really good to do is to say to the child at some point when they're very young, take them for the walk and say, that tree, you belong to that tree, and that tree belongs to you. This earth belongs to you, and you belong to earth. And just connect that child up to everything, because our identity, here's the thing about identity, right? I'm Mike Harrell, and I have this education, and I have this amount of money, and this stuff happened in my life, and this is who I am. But who you are also defines who you're not, right?
Yeah.
If I ask a normal person, are you this microphone? You'll say no. Are you this chair? Are you this chair? They'll say no. Are you the wall? No. Are you the ceiling? No. Are you the earth? No. And you go on and on and on and on, defining who you're not until it gets pretty damn depressing. You know what I mean? And it's not true. We're everything. And to feel connected to everything, to feel part of that web of life, that's a good thing. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. It's not this exclusive. We're not exclusive beings. We're infinite and immortal in what was never created. We're not these exclusive identities, lone ranger, you know.
Yeah.
We're individuated collective. Yeah.
Cool. Very interesting stuff.
So any questions, or is that enough? Because I don't know if there's anything else there's a lot more stuff you could talk about.
Well, yeah, I'm just conscious about the time because we've done over 2 hours. There was one little thing I wanted to talk about. I say little, it's a very big thing. But I was hoping we'd go into politics a little bit because I know you're from Georgia, there's been a lot of controversy go on, the voting scandal and whatnot. Some people think that's true, others not. What's the kind of sentiment in Georgia, and what are your thoughts on that?
What's going on in Georgia?
Mm,
Georgia has got a really high percentage of black people,
mm,
and it's also one of the places that carries the wound of slavery
mm,
and the apartheid, the institutionalized and government sanctioned separation between the whites and the blacks. So they carry it the most. So in some ways, the black people in Georgia are America's deepest wound. Wherever you have those, there's the American Indians carry the deep wound, very deep wounds, and the African people and the black people in the South all carry very deep wounds, and they politicize it. So um, their wounds are so deep that they actually are carrying more of they're actually, because of the law of attraction, they actually see more uh, racial issues, right? Racism. They see it more and it manifests more because of their wounds. And so that's on a political level, uh, they don't have any, they can't comprehend that the election was stolen. For them, every election has been stolen. So, and they've been traditionally Democrats, so now the Democrats have kind of won, and they feel good about it, and so they want to feel good about this election. Well, at the same time, the whole thing's tainted or rotten, and it's shit, right?
yeah,
But they don't want to hear that. They just want to hear that we won, right? Because they need a winning,
yeah,
So that's kind of the way I see it.
yeah. It's like over here, everyone's celebrating, like, oh yes, Trump's out. Like at least Trump's out. It's like, how is that gonna improve your life? It's not.
No, I mean Trump was the only thing about Trump. I didn't particularly like Trump, but
Mm,
he stopped the war and he started to put pride back into America. So people started to think about starting businesses and invest in America. He sort of defended this crazy trade deals that we got and those kind of things, which really doesn't impact me a lot, but it just gives hope
yeah,
more. And whereas Barack Obama was just a nightmare. He continually had wars, and he was continually
warmonger.
selling our stuff off. And so was Clinton's. Just made terrible trade deals and gutted America. We have more people. Look, we got more people living on the street now than I don't know. It's just crazy, that's not the way that America was. America always had enough middle class for everybody to be working.
Mm,
But then they did this thing with conglomerates, right? There was a time when we couldn't have monopolies, right? And they did away with that, and then the conglomerates just went and bought everything up. So every TV station, every radio station, every shopping mall, every store outlet, and they're all got like bought up into these conglomerates, and that gutted America. So I like that about him. I mean, I still don't trust him. I think he's kind of like a borderline psychopath, but
yeah,
but the idea that he stopped the wars, he stopped engaging in new wars and pulled back 5 or 10% of the troops and stuff, but they weren't actively engaged in killing people anymore. That's been a long time coming for me. So
that's
uh,
like the first time in about 50 years, isn't it?
it's the first time there was 4 years connected, and it's
Mm,
in about 100 years.
mm.
Four
That's
four years.
commendable on its own, isn't it? Which people seem to miss.
It's what?
I said that's commendable by itself, which people seem to miss.
Well, again, remember the wars in heaven.
Mm,
So anytime you have a wars in heaven manifest as the wars on earth, and what goes on in the wars on earth, God's on our side. God's on our side. No, God's on our side, right? It's the same shit.
mm.
You know what I mean? So anytime you have the wars end, is a good thing.
Yeah.
And so he was closing off the borders and doing those kind of things. A lot of people's controversy, and but it gives a lot of people more pride and patriotism, and make America great again, put Americans first, because that wasn't happening. It was like, everybody is so I think that's good. I'm not really sure what's going on with this coronavirus. To me, it's a bioweapon
Yeah, I agree.
and it's an act of war. And the war was against the middle class and to enculturate people into slavery, into obedience in the name of good, you know.
I agree. But I think it's going to backfire eventually. Maybe I'm
I
just
hope so. I just saw a video today about some people who were in Washington, D.C., and they were watching these vans and buses carrying people around. And they're thinking, and it was like at night or something, they're thinking that a bunch of people started to get arrested. And there was 4 or 5 buses and all these vans and police cars and stuff. It was going on all night. So who knows? We'll find out. We'll find out eventually.
Yeah.
But the way America goes is going to be the way the rest of the world goes. You
What,
know,
why do you think that is? Just because of the
we're just big. The EU has so many. Your countries are a little bit like the states, right?
Yeah.
But if the United States goes down, then you don't really have anybody, to be like in England against the world, or France against the world, or Italy against the world. That's a hard one to pull off.
Yeah, it'd be like
Yeah.
Georgia against the world, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
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 No, interesting times there.
Yeah.
Yeah, how it plays out.
I'm not worried. That's because, uh, like I said, God the Father and God the Mother have gotten back together and patched things up, so to speak. And we are both God the Father and God the Mother's children. And Mother Earth, Gaia Sophia, you know, loves her children. And this is supposed to be. Do you ever remember the land of Pan? Do you have any memories of that?
Was that the land of what?
The land of Pan. It's like there was Atlantis, and there was Lemuria, and before that there was
Yeah.
other stuff, and then there was the land of Pan.
Yeah, my friend teaches a lecture on that. But I can't
Yeah,
remember Pan. I remember Lumeria, Atlantis.
yeah. Well, the land of Pan, we didn't have the same sun as we had now.
Oh, is
The
it the
land
one
of
that's further out?
Pan, our sun was Saturn.
Mm.
Saturn. As a matter of fact, we're not from this solar system, and we're not from this galaxy. We're from another solar system in another galaxy, and they met like this. And the Saturn was our sun of that solar system, and we were a planet of that sun. And it was a brown dwarf, and the planets, our planet and a few others, were inside the corona, right?
Mm.
So that means we had light coming from every direction, but it was really soft, reddish, glowish light. And we were energy beings, so we could fly and we could manifest things, and we could, it was pretty much magic and innocent, and think of fairies and gnomes, and and just having fun and all that kind of stuff. That's what the land of Pan was. Yeah. But I think we might get some of that back.
Is that where Peter Pan comes from? Then I'm guessing.
Yeah. Pan was the god. Pan was the father of manifestation. Remember the body form, the god of form. Pan was the god of form, but he was physically on Earth, and this like half goat, half man kind of a thing. He was just having fun there. So form. But yeah. Well, that's another thing that's another thing that was going on, is like we've had a rough ride, because we started off in another solar system, part of another galaxy, and got basically taken over by this much bigger sun. And remember that current that drives everything, the current from the electric life, the magnetic electric life, that current is what lights up the sun. And it's why the planets are all on a plane. It's because of the magnetic field of the current that comes into the sun to light it up. So if our sun changes, we know because whatever goes on with the sun has to do with the current that's coming in. The current that's coming in sets the vibrational tone and the amount of density that we have and stuff like that.
And do you think that affects consciousness as well?
Consciousness is the feeling of energy, and all energy has feelings. So if the vibrational energy that you're feeling goes up, your consciousness goes up. If you pull your energy up, let's say you do ayahuasca, your energy goes up, your consciousness goes up. You do LSD or you do drugs or you do meditation or you change your energy, you change your consciousness. So for sure, and that's why astrology works. That's why tarot cards work. That's why all these kind of things work, is because they're just the planets. Planets are very cool people. I don't know if you ever talked to a planet. I had a planet say hello to me one time. It was like, that was awesome.
My girlfriend would probably like to talk to you about that. She's an astrologer.
Yeah, well, the thing is the reason how astrology came is because at one time we could talk to the planets and they would tell us what's up.
Mm.
And it was the personality of the planets that kind of gave us the personalities of this astrological charts, and people could figure all that kind of stuff out. But the land of Pan, we didn't have that because there was no night and there was no time.
Mm.
So it was called the time before time, right?
Mm.
And there was no stars because we were illuminated inside the corona. The corona was just really big, even though the star was small. So we were inside the corona. But then we got sort of like this war of the worlds things happen. And then when the energy from Saturn, right, got taken over, the energy that made Saturn a star shifted over to the sun. And then Saturn went down. And when it went down in energy, it couldn't hold the planet Earth anymore in orbit because of the energy, of magnetic energy. So we went wandering around in space, and that's where the ice ages and stuff came from. But on Earth, that was the beginning of time for us, because then we were spinning and we had this sun coming up and going down, and we had these stars and stuff, and we made astrological, we put rocks around so we could figure out when the seasons were going and what were the cycles and stuff. That all happened from the Saturn to now. That's why all around the world you have these Stonehenges and these astronomical little buildings and stuff. They're trying to figure out what's all this with the stars and what's going on with the seasons and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So
Everybody remembers this stuff. I'm just telling this stuff so that people can remember a little bit.
Yeah, no, everything you've said makes a lot of sense. What planet did you talk to?
I don't know. She came in. I was given a vision by some Sasquatch friends of mine. I was given a vision of unity consciousness. Those guys are major players too. They've been around. They were the first humans. They've been here before we were. They were actually on Earth before we took physical form.
Mm-hmm.
And they never fell. So they never fell from the land of Pan. They never fell from grace. That's why they can go invisible and stuff. I was initiated into a meditation by one too. And his initiation was as equal to the perfect master. That was pretty good. So I've had 3 initiations in my life. One from the living perfect master, Prema Wat. One from the mother of everything, which was pretty outrageous. I'm one of the few people I've ever heard of that actually saw the mother of everything. And one from the Hanuman clan, the Sasquatch clan. Heart-light meditation. Basically breath, how to follow your breath into your heart and focus on your heart until it glows.
Is that part of language lessons of the heart? Because I'd like to give that a
I'll
go.
have it in there as like I have it in on another list, but it's not actually. I don't promote meditation. I want to promote cleaning the soul out, right? Because there's so much that almost everything we do is just spiritual bypass. We drink, we sage, we play drums. I was this anything that you can imagine to keep from going into the hurt locker. We do all that stuff. So it's all kind of like this spiritual bypass. And you want to meditate. Well, why do you want to meditate? Because you're fucking in pain and you want to end the pain, you know what I mean? So you use the meditation, and this is what I did. I use the meditation as sort of like it's like a pure drug, kind of the
And in the
holistic drug or something. Yeah. Unless you face your pain, uh, you're just playing games. You know what I mean? You're just putting it off. That's why most people don't do any healing till they get in their 30s and 40s, because they still want to go out and play, and you know,
they don't want to do the dirty work.
yeah. And God bless them. Maybe they don't have to. I don't recommend it for anybody, because it's a spiritual thing. You have to feel like you need it, you know?
And be ready, do you think?
Well, the thing about your denials is you don't have to go seeking your denials. Your denials will come and get you. You know what I mean? They come and get you. Like I said, I was happy meditating underneath the tree, and next thing I know, 3 months later, I'm on my hands and knees with snot coming out of my nose, screaming. You know what I mean? Or bawling and stuff, right? What? That just came and got you, because that's, the ground of being is absolute inclusivity and unconditional love. And when you're in pain and a void of love, that is such an exclusive thing. It is such a narrow thing. It's such an isolated thing, a bifurcated, split thing, that for that to exist, the whole of the universe will collapse in on, to bring light, to bring energy, to bring compassion to that. You know what I mean? Because that's a hole in the fabric of the universe there, that it just can't be. It can't exist forever. So suffering does not last. It has a beginning, it will have an end. You know what I mean? And maybe not this lifetime, but it'll have an end for sure. Absolutely will have an end. Everybody heals. Everybody heals, right? And if you got to spend a couple of lifetimes, doing Reiki on each other, and then before you get to the real stuff, go ahead. It's not gonna, it's all good.
Yeah, no rush. Yeah.
No, the only rush is your own pain. As soon as you understand the game, you have a spirit, heart, will, and body, and and to know that your inner child is, in fact, that tortured child that's being peeled alive inside your soul, right?
Yeah.
What would you do? What would you not do to stop that child from being hurt? What would you not do? What would you not accomplish? What would hold you back from actually rescuing that child who is in perpetual pain, that we don't have to feel because our brain doesn't have any pain sensors? But when you go down in there and you feel it, what would you not do? You have to stop the pain of that child. It's your child, it's you, right? And that's what you're handed your divinity upon ending your pain. You're not the king of your kingdom if you allow these principalities and these imagined nations and all these things that perpetually are feeding off of the suffering of your child, a dead baby, that's inside you. You got to do it. You know what I mean? There's no way around it. Anyway, maybe we'll just leave it on that everything is eventually going to return back to love.
So yeah, just to finish up, can you just let us know any services that you have to offer? We can maybe leave some links down below?
Um, well, I have a my Facebook group, Language Lessons of the Heart Facebook group. That'd be a good one, and you can look that up. Yeah, I think you're even in that group. So and I'm not selling anything. Like I said, if you are in pain, then that's a good place to start. You know, uh, but listen, I like drumming and I like sage and crystals and drinking smoothies and stuff. But that's not what I do. It's if you're in pain, I teach you how to do it, and I don't tell anybody to do it. I don't say you got to do your work. I'm not going to remind anybody because this is a spiritual adult thing to do.
Yeah.
So Language Lessons of the Heart on Facebook, and you're good to go.
Awesome. So yeah, I'll drop that link down below.
And remember, we're all going to make it. You know what I mean? There's no not making it, and it's already happening. You know what I mean? Because of like a remote viewing, not only can you go to any place in time and space, but also any state of consciousness, any connection with any being. So there's not anything that you're lacking. As soon as you put it out there, if I want to go do this way or that way, that collapses the wave function. You've already got it inside you. It's already there. You know what I mean? The enlightenment is there. The God is there. Everything is already there already. Yeah. And it's done in love. We got a loving universe. That's the bottom line.
Beautiful stuff and a very positive message to end. So yeah, thank you so much, Michael. We're doing 2.5 hours and learned so much from you. I'm looking forward to watching it back and taking it.
All right.
Cool.
And good luck with remember what we were talking about. I'll talk to you later. This is just fantastic. This is exactly pretty much what I wanted to talk about. It's important to me because most people, when I wake up in the morning, I'm always in the first creation. And I remember that. This is what I'm talking about is I saw this stuff happen like a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I kind of feeling that a lot of people have seen this happen. They just don't, they don't turn in that station. You got to be willing to look at the dark.
Cool. Nice one. I'm just going to stop the recording and we can carry on chatting. But thanks
All
again.
right. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.